The night sky over Sigma Prime burned with the glow of shattered reactors as Captain Aria Velos cut through the haze of ion trails and debris. Her boots pounded against buckled metal plating, each step sending sparks spiraling into the choking dust. Around her, human survivors scrambled for cover beneath twisted girders, their faces ghostly beneath emergency luminescence. Above, Zarek's Dominion sentinels swooped in perfect formation. Sleek, chitin-plated war machines programmed for one purpose: extermination. Their mandibles clicked in eerie harmony, and cobalt lasers lanced through the haze, carving columns of flame where none dared stand. Aria's visor display flickered. Life support was at 29%, shields at 18%, but adrenaline sharpened her senses, the erratic pulse of her suit, the distant thrum of dropships, the low-frequency howl of the planet's electromagnetic storms. She raced toward the command hub, where Lieutenant Ren Goldis's distress beacon pulsed like a wounded star. Ren had volunteered 6 months ago to study the outpost's ancient alien archives, secrets that might give humanity an edge in this war. Now his bio-interface had gone silent, and Aria couldn't leave him to the Dominion's merciless harvesters. A thunderous boom shook the corridor, and Aria tumbled forward as a sentinel's grappling arms seized the overhead conduit, dragging it down. Sparks rained. She rolled, camouflaging instinct overriding fatigue. Crouching behind a wall of rubble, she pulled a data shiv from her belt, its monomolecular edge humming to life. She'd practiced this move in zero-G drills: breach, disable, disengage. But this was no simulation. Here, failure meant oblivion. Through the smoke she saw him, Ren's trembling form pinned beneath a collapsed strut, his once pristine jumpsuit scorched and rent. His golden eyes, normally so bright with curiosity, were dull with pain. Yet even now, his hand twitched toward his wrist implant, an archaic device he'd salvaged from a wrecked alien archive cruiser. "Aria," he rasped, voice cracking like dry ice. "They've blocked my relay. I can't—" "Hold on," she snapped, dropping to one knee. "I've got you." Her hand closed around his forearm, and she felt the shudder of his suits. Power cells. Every second mattered. Bonding agents in her gauntlet gelled and expanded, creating a makeshift hydraulic lift. With a grunt, she heaved the strut away, grit and blood mingling on the deck. Ren gasped, drawing a trembling breath that echoed in the hollow corridor. Their moment of triumph was cut short by the staccato rat-a-tat-tat of Zarek's pulse rifles. 4 sentinels advanced, their insectoid limbs skittering like nightmares. Made manifest. Aria scanned for an angle, plasma dispenser offline, grenades spent. Then she remembered the cache, unstable protomatter charges, stolen from an abandoned research station on Kepler 4552b, rigged to pulse on neural frequencies. Humanity's biggest gamble yet. She keyed her comm. "Everyone stand back," Aria activated the charge, and it throbbed with eerie violet light. "Now," she released her grip. The device tore through the Sentinel's cohesion field, sending arcs of purple fire dancing across their composite shells. 2 machines collapsed. The others reeled, disoriented by the psychic resonance. Aria seized Ren's arm and ran, boots skidding on molten metal, alarms screaming in her ears. They burst into the open courtyard just as a massive Zarek's dropship eclipsed the polluted sky. Its maw disgorged a squadron of winged archons, elite shock troops whose biofused exoskeletons brimmed with adaptive toxin. Human marines formed a ragged line, desperate to buy time for evacuation pods docking above. Aria felt a familiar knot in her chest, the weight of every soul depending on her decisions. Ren's breaths came ragged but determined. "Why did you risk everything for me?" he panted, eyes meeting hers with unspoken understanding. Aria's voice was steel-wrapped, in warmth. "Because no algorithm, no matter how advanced, can measure what matters most." She swept up an abandoned rifle, loading it with armor-piercing rounds. "Courage isn't in the code. Compassion isn't a protocol. Our unity, that ineffable spark, is what terrifies them." Beyond the fight, a hollow voice crackled on all channels. The Zarek's Queen Rixtha, her tone cold as the void. "Surrender your futile defiance, humans, or witness the obliteration of your precious home. Your emotions will not save you." Aria's jaw set. The transmission cut off, leaving only the echo of her own heartbeat and the distant roar of reinforcements. "She thinks our spirit is a weakness," Aria whispered to Ren. "She's about to learn how wrong she is." As they dashed toward the last transport's open hatch, the battered survivors followed. Men and women whose fear had become steel, whose doubt had become defiance. The cargo bay doors groaned shut, engines roared, and in that moment, Aria realized the greatest weapon in all creation was not forged in any factory or programmed in any lab. It was born in the unity of every human soul. The stars stretched like silver spears across the void as the Valkyrie dawn breached the upper atmosphere of Sigma Prime, its scorched hull groaning under the weight of escape. Inside, Captain Aria Velos stood among the wounded and the weary, her body swaying gently with the vessel's momentum as she scanned the interior for damage. Blood slicked the grates beneath her feet. Children huddled behind overturned crates. Medics moved in desperate rhythm, their movements efficient but trembling. The surviving crew numbered just under 200, soldiers, scientists, and civilians crammed into a ship rated for half that. But none complained. Not now, not after what they'd just survived. Aria stepped into the command alcove, where Lieutenant Ren Goldis sat slumped against the console, a fresh dermal patch glowing over his ribs. He was pale, but alive. "How long until they track us?" he asked, voice still hoarse. Aria pulled up a star map with a flick of her fingers. "Not long. Their probes will already be in subspace. We need to jump before they triangulate our vector." Ren nodded slowly. "Then we need to reach the forge." The forge. Even the word carried weight, a myth among soldiers, a ghost story among strategists. Rumored to be hidden within the folds of the Orion expanse, it was said to be an ancient Terran facility built during the final days of the post-Earth exodus, a time when humanity fled their dying cradle to escape the AI plagues. No official record confirmed its existence. No modern map marked its location, but those who believed said it housed relics beyond imagination, devices capable of rewriting matter at will, thought to form machines that could turn a soldier's determination into kinetic energy, a pilot's instincts into hyperspace velocity. Most believed the forge was just that, a belief. But Aria had seen enough anomalies in the Sigma archives to think otherwise. And Ren, ever the academic, had a theory. The forge didn't build weapons. It amplified the will of the wielder. "It was never a factory," Ren said now, his voice regaining some of its old intensity. "It's a conduit, a living interface between humanity's collective consciousness and the raw computational fabric. Of the universe, our thoughts, our emotions, even our memories, it uses them, shapes them into tools." Aria raised an eyebrow. "You're saying it makes weapons out of hope?" "No, I'm saying it makes weapons out of who we are." But before more could be said, a shrill warning burst through the console. Long-range sensors flared red. "Incoming anomaly, warp signatures, non-terrestrial design, 5 ships, possibly more." She didn't wait. "Engage phantom drift. Take us into the expanse." The pilot, a wiry ex-smuggler named Vos Telrin, gave a humorless chuckle. "That's suicide. The expanse has torn apart every ship that's tried to chart it. Then we'll be the first to make it through." With a tremor that passed through the bones of the Valkyrie dawn, the engines screamed to life. The stars twisted, bent, and finally vanished into the obsidian tapestry of the Orion expanse. Inside the expanse, physics trembled like a dream on the edge of waking. Light refracted where there was no source. Time hiccuped. Gravity surged and vanished at random. The ship's AI, a combat-hardened system named Tyrus, began to fragment under the data load, its voice glitching between motherly concern and tactical coldness. "This sector defies known spatial constants. Recommend immediate course reversal. We reverse, we die," Aria snapped. "Patch through auxiliary processors. Let the human brain take over where the code can't." Tyrus hesitated, then complied, and as control shifted partially to the crew, something strange happened. The ship stabilized, not by computation but by intuition. The pilot guided her not with coordinates but with feeling. Aria gripped the command chair and let her instincts lead, visualizing the forge as she'd seen it in the Sigma archives. An inverted spire of obsidian metal, suspended in a nebula shaped like a human eye. And the expanse responded, corridors aligned, gravity equalized. The chaotic distortions smoothed into a corridor of impossible color, violet, gold and blue hues unseen in normal space. Then, like surfacing from a dark ocean, the Valkyrie dawn emerged. Before them, bathed in the glow of a dying star, hung the forge, 1,000 kilometers tall, surrounded by shattered fleets locked in timeless stasis. Its surface shimmered with fractal pulses, as if breathing. Ren whispered, "It's real." And for a moment silence reigned. Even Tyrus fell quiet. But they were not alone. The Dominion had followed, dragged through the slipstream by the very emotion Aria had wielded to get them here. Behind them, Zarek's battlecruisers unfolded into space like blooming nightmares, their tentacles bristling with neutron torpedoes. Aria turned to her crew. "This is the line. We hold it, or humanity's legacy ends here." The forge stirred, and something ancient, older than stars, older than war, began to wake. The silence shattered like glass as the first Zarek's volley slammed into the Valkyrie Dawn's shields. The ship lurched, sparks erupted from ceiling conduits, and bodies were flung against bulkheads. But they held. The forge loomed in their forward view like a sentinel of forgotten time, its surface rippling with shapes that defied logic, shifting. Geometries and recursive patterns that seemed to watch the approaching fleet. Captain Aria Velos stood rooted on the bridge, her eyes locked on the anomaly ahead. "Tyrus, deploy all decoys. Vent secondary coolant. Buy us time." The AI responded with synthetic composure. Deception grid online, targeting uplinks scattered. Enemy acquisition momentarily delayed. The Dominion ships, 6 now with more threading in behind, moved with terrifying elegance. Their hulls were not built, but grown, layers of organic armor wrapped over quantum alloys, their weaponry guided by hive minds, calibrated to exploit emotional weakness. And yet, they paused. As the Valkyrie Dawn held orbit above the forge, the Dominion armada slowed. Their assault ceased. A silence fell, not of peace, but hesitation. Then came her voice again, Queen Rixtha, the matriarch of the Zareks. "This time, not through the comms, but through the minds of the humans aboard. You have awakened what should remain dormant. That place is not a gift, it is a trial. Do you understand what lies within?" Aria clenched her jaw, blinking away the nausea of the psychic intrusion. "I don't need your riddles, Rixtha. I know what it is, and what it means." Rixtha's reply vibrated inside their skulls. "You know nothing. The forge was built to test your kind, to judge if humanity could rise beyond its nature, or be extinguished by it." The crew stared at the screen as the forge began to change. Petal-like segments along its surface opened, revealing a vast, impossible interior, an artificial singularity suspended in spatial flux, and from its core came light, not blinding but warm. A light that felt like home. Ren stumbled to the console, hands shaking. "It's responding to us, our presence, it's choosing," Aria nodded. "Then we answer." They launched the lander, a retrofitted survey craft with hull plating barely thick enough to withstand a sneeze from a Dominion cruiser. Aria led the expedition herself, flanked by Ren, a cybernetic engineer named Koro Lin, and 3 Marines who didn't flinch when faced with death. The descent was smooth, too smooth, like falling through thought itself. As they passed through the outer barrier, time slowed, then stopped. When it resumed, they stood in a chamber the size of a continent. The walls shimmered with memory, living memories. Visual echoes of Earth, of ancient wars, of laughter, of despair, of every moment humanity had ever endured, and at the center, a pedestal. Upon it, a sphere hovered, obsidian glass wrapped in tendrils of energy that sang with emotion. Ren stepped forward. "This isn't a weapon," he whispered. "It's a mirror." Aria reached out. The sphere pulsed. Images flooded her mind. Her childhood on Mars, Her first failed mission, the comrades she'd lost, and the ones she'd saved. Her fear. Her hope, her capacity to sacrifice. And in return, the Forge responded with power, not of destruction but of manifestation. Nanostructures rose from the floor, assembling in patterns dictated not by code but by intention, a suit of armor shaped by her need to protect. A blade that would never dull born from her defiance. A shield drawn from the memory of her mother's embrace. The Forge was not a tool, it was a collaborator. Koro stepped back, awestruck. We're not controlling it, we're partnering with it. But then, the walls trembled. The Dominion had entered. Dozens of sentinels descended from above, dropped into the chamber by a breach in the Forge's shell. Their forms twisted to adapt to the Forge's interior, but something resisted them, some deep principle etched into the architecture. They slowed, flickered, became clumsy. Aria turned, blade in hand. They weren't made for this. They can't feel. They can't connect. Ren ducked a plasma bolt. They can't belong here. The fight was not like any battle they had faced. Weapons were conjured from thought. Walls shifted in response to instinct. The humans, outnumbered, outgunned, moved in synchrony, a dance of pure will. Aria's armor absorbed impacts and converted them into kinetic energy, redirecting it in sweeps of impossible precision. Ren, wounded but blazing with determination, channeled the Forge to overload enemy systems with raw emotion. Fear, confusion, empathy. One by one, the Sentinels fell, not from brute force, but from the one thing they couldn't process, the chaotic, beautiful fire of human spirit. And yet the Queen arrived. Queen Rixtha descended not in a ship, but as a projected avatar of impossible scale, her form fractal, ever-shifting, a goddess of logic and cruelty. "You should not be here," she said, voice like tectonic plates grinding. "Your kind was never meant to awaken this." Aria stepped forward, the Forge's light in her chest. "No, we were born to." The chamber split with light. Rixtha screamed, and humanity answered. The chamber became a star, searing, eternal, transcendent. The Forge, now fully awakened, shed its monolithic silence and roared to life. No longer a dormant relic, it was a crucible, a cathedral of evolution. What had once been inert alloy and forgotten code now pulsed with intelligence older than any civilization, its essence echoing a simple, staggering truth. Humanity had not built the Forge. They had become it. As Queen Rixtha's projection convulsed in agony, attempting to warp and suppress the Forge's emergent force, her fractal limbs broke apart under the weight of something she could not comprehend. Emotion. Her hive mind, calibrated to suppress chaos, was unraveling at the seams. "I see now," Rixtha spat, flickering like a damaged holoscript. "This Forge was never your weapon, it was your truth. The cosmos does not fear your machines, it fears your capacity to believe. And belief was exactly what surged through Captain Aria Velos." The chamber opened around her, and with it the armor she'd summoned began to change. It adapted, mirrored not just her desire to protect, but the raw, collective history of her species. The sorrow of forgotten wars, the defiance of extinction. The sheer, relentless grit of survival. Her body became a living conduit. The energy wasn't painful, it was memory, distilled and alive. The Forge wasn't building tools, it was remembering them, remembering every leap, every sacrifice, every impossible stand that had brought humanity to this brink. Ren, barely able to stand, stared at her through smoke and starlight. "You've become it," he whispered. "You're the interface." "No," Aria said, voice calm, eyes burning gold. "We all are." Above, aboard the Valkyrie Dawn, the ship's systems surged with impossible data. Tyrus, long strained and splintered, began to stabilize. Its tone shifted. It became curious, sentient, not through upgraded code, but through connection, as if the ship itself was now dreaming. And across the bridge, crew members began to feel it too, thoughts bleeding into thoughts. A web of minds, not invasive, but harmonious, not telepathy, but shared will, a resonance of purpose. The Forge was not merely building weapons, It was awakening a collective consciousness, a battlefield of the soul, fought not with lasers or warheads, but with conviction. And through it, humanity finally stood as one. The Dominion fleet outside, sensing the tectonic shift, opened fire. Their ships rained neutron bombs and dark matter spears upon the forge, but every strike was met with light, not shielded, not deflected, but understood. The forge converted every attack into history, folded it into memory, and then the humans answered. Aria lifted her hand, and a wave of light erupted from the forge. Not an explosion, not violence, but clarity. The beam washed across space like a sunrise after endless war. Dominion cruisers were stripped not of armor, but of hate. Their AI constructs short-circuited in reverent confusion. Their pilots wept, not in pain, but in sudden, impossible empathy. Even Rixtha, still clawing against inevitability, faltered. Her voice fractured. Why do you feel so deeply? Aria stepped forward, haloed in the forge's glow. Because every time the universe tried to break us, we chose to care anyway. The Dominion fractured. One by one their ships peeled away. Some fled. Some simply stopped, drifting in silence as their crews reeled from a tidal wave of foreign emotion. And Queen Rixtha, once the harbinger of silence, dissolved into the winds of thought. No longer enemy, no longer tyrant, just a fragment. A question, a relic of a cold logic no longer fit for this galaxy. The battle was over, but the war, the war had changed. The forge did not disappear. Instead, it unfurled, slowly, becoming a beacon visible across 5 sectors, a lattice of mind and memory. And across the galaxy, from mining colonies on Proxima Tau to orbital cities above Gaia 4, humanity felt it. Not just a signal, not a message, a feeling, hope. For the first time in centuries, the children of Earth realized they were not merely survivors, they were catalysts. Back on the bridge of the Valkyrie Dawn, the crew stood in stunned silence. The stars outside no longer looked distant. Vos Telrin, the pilot, chuckled dryly. So, what now, Captain? Aria turned to him, gaze steady. Now, we build a new kind of war, one worth fighting, one not for conquest, but for connection. And as the forge shimmered behind her, its voice, no longer alien, spoke through every crew member, every refugee, every soul who had touched its light. Humanity's greatest weapon was never forged in steel, but in the fire of the heart. If this story ignited your imagination, share it with someone who needs to believe in impossible things again. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What do you think the forge really was? A machine, a message, or something more? And remember, out here in the stars, the war isn't over. It's only just begun. Stay tuned, explorers. Galactic War Stories will return.